It all started on a Tuesday when Frank Olson woke to the dark certainty that the world he served was hiding something lethal. Olson was not a fringe figure. He was a bacteriologist, a decorated army scientist who had worked at Fort Detrick and been folded into the CIA's covert programs during the height of the Cold War. He believed in national security. He believed in science. What he did not believe in was being turned into an unwitting subject in a secret war against the human mind. In November 1953, Olson was summoned to a classified meeting inside a government retreat. There, Sidney Gottlieb, later identified as the chemist who ran MK-Ultra's more notorious drug experiments, administered LSD to a group of colleagues without their knowledge. Over the following days, Olson's behavior unspooled. He experienced terrifying nightmares, paranoia, and a growing conviction that what he had been asked to build might be used to destroy people, not protect them. A week later, on November 28, 1953, Frank Olson fell from the 13th floor of the Statler Hotel in New York City. The official file at first called it suicide. The CIA, years after, disclosed that it had dosed Olson with LSD as part of a clandestine experiment. The admission was only the beginning of a story that would expose a program born of Cold War panic, MK-Ultra, authorized in 1953, an umbrella of projects in which the CIA pursued chemical, biological, and psychological means to control minds and extract secrets. The context was stark. American intelligence had watched reports of alleged brainwashing during the Korean War and feared that Soviet and Chinese programs might offer a strategic edge. The CIA poured money into universities, hospitals, and front companies and authorized scientists like Gottlieb to probe the limits of human consciousness. Subjects, often unwitting, were dosed with LSD, barbiturates, and other drugs. Interrogations blurred into experiments. Ethics were erased in the name of national survival. The trauma of Olson's death lingered like a stain. For 2 decades, the truth lay buried beneath classified files and denials. Then, in the mid-1970s, congressional inquiries, the Rockefeller Commission and the Church Committee forced the CIA's shadow programs into daylight. The agency admitted it had carried out experiments on unwitting citizens and destroyed many records. In 1973, Director Richard Helms ordered the bulk of MK-Ultra files shredded. Families like the Olsons were left with fragments and half-answers. The government later offered a settlement and acknowledged responsibility for administering LSD to Frank without his consent. But the questions did not end with an apology. In 1994, the Olsons had Frank's body exhumed. Forensic examination revealed a skull fracture consistent with blunt trauma, suggesting a violent encounter before the fall. A reopened probe in the 1990s failed to produce criminal charges. Prosecutors concluded evidence was insufficient, but the fracture rewired public imagination. What had happened in those days between the Maryland retreat and the Statler Hotel? Had a frightened man leapt, or had men in power silenced someone who had seen too much? The conspiracy is simple in its cruelty and complex in its reach. A clandestine agency, empowered by fear, used science as a weapon and ordinary people as laboratories. MK-Ultra recruited hospitals, universities, and even physicians in pursuit of a technique that never fully materialized, but not for lack of trying. The program's destruction of records, the secrecy around settlements, and the obstruction of clear accountability created a pattern that reads like a cover-up. Frank Olson's story is not an isolated scream in the dark. It is a caution woven into American history about the moral cost of secrecy, the ease with which states rationalize abuses in wartime imaginaries, and a man who, after serving his country, slipped from a window and left behind questions that still press like a hand against the glass. The horror is not only in how he died, but in how institutions made it possible. A system that prized covert triumphs over human lives and hid those lives behind shredded files and bureaucratic euphemisms. In the end, the fall of one scientist revealed the ethical void beneath Cold War certainty and the chilling lengths a nation will go to when fear becomes policy.